Our learning goal for today is I can evaluate or I can find the composition of two functions. So we've talked about some different operations. On the last lesson, we added, subtracted, multiplied, and divided functions. This is actually a fifth operation we can do with functions. It's called the composition. The notation looks like this. So the way you'll see it written a lot of times is f of g of x. So that the little open circle there means composition. It looks kind of like a multiplication symbol, but multiplication is a closed dot. With composition, it's an open dot. The way we say that, we don't say fog. It kind of looks like that, but we don't say that. We say f of g of x. So that's the way we actually say it. What it really means is this, and this is the way we're going to write it. This will be helpful to us. I'll show you in a second why it's helpful. But we're going to write it this way. Because the f comes first, that means f is the outside function. The g comes second. That means you're plugging it inside of f. So we're taking g of x and plugging it inside of f of x. You have to be careful. A lot of times we confuse this with multiplication. Because it kind of looks like multiplication with the parentheses, but we're not timesing f and g together. We're taking g of x and we're putting it into or inside of f of x. So this looks different depending on the type of problem. There's really two types of problems you'll see. One is when they actually give you a number like -6 to plug in. The other one is when they don't give you a number to plug in and you're trying to find a rule or an equation. So let's start first with this first type when we're plugging a number in. So this says g of n equals 3n plus 1. F of n equals 2n minus 2. It wants us to find g of f of -6. So the very first thing we're going to do, similar to what we did on the other operations, is let's rewrite this problem. So instead of writing it this way, write it this way. G, the f goes on the inside, and the -6 goes inside of f. So it's kind of like it's nested. If you ever think of those, like, what are those Russian nesting dolls? You have one inside of the other one. That's what's happening here. So now when I do this, the way I work this out is I just start on the inside and work my way out. So I start by plugging -6 into f. I got to figure out what that comes out to. We've done that a lot before, right? I'm going to come up here to f and plug in -6 and see what do I get back out. So plug it into f. I get 2 times -6 minus 2. Let's work that out. So that comes out to be 2 times -6 is -12. -12 minus 2 is a -14. So I plug -6 in, I get -14 back out. Okay, so now I come down to here. I'm going to go g of, and this part, I know that part was -14. Okay, now I've got to take -14 and plug it into g. So let's go back up here and plug -14 in. So 3 times -14 plus 1, and we work that out. 3 times -14, you can use a calculator, but that's, I think, -42. -42 plus 1 is -41. So my final answer says find g of f from -6. It comes out to be -41. There's my answer right there. What we really did there, so let's kind of just back up and kind of get a big picture here. What we really did is we started by plugging -6 into f and finding my answer. It came out to be -14. And then I take my answer and I plug that into g. So I plug -14 into g and got my final solution. Right, so -6 into my first function, get my answer. Whatever answer I get back out, I have to take that answer and plug it into the outside function. Let's try another one. So we're trying to find h of g of -7. Remember, I always start by rewriting it. So h of g of -7. Okay, start with the inside. What is g of -7 equal to? So come up to g. Let's plug in -7. So I'm going to plug that into g first. So if I plug -7 into g, I get -7 squared plus 2. Remember what we talked about before is when you have plug it in -7, make sure you put it in parentheses if you're using your calculator. It should come out to be a positive 49. 49 plus 2 is 51. So now I have h of, and that inside part right there came out to be 51. Okay, now I got to take 51 and plug it into h. So let's go up here and plug 51 into h. So that would be negative 2 times 51 plus 2. And you can grab a calculator and plug that in there. I think negative 2 times 51 is negative 102 plus 2, so negative 100. So my answer is h of g of negative 7 comes out to be a negative 100. That's what that works out to be. But again, the idea is this. I plugged negative 7 into g, got my answer, which was 51, and plugged that into h. And that was my final answer. I want you to try this one. So pause the video, try this one on your own, and then I'll work through it, and you can compare your answer to mine, and we'll see if it matches up there. All right, so I'm first going to write it this way, f of g of negative 2. Okay, now start. I'm first going to plug negative 2 into g and find out what I get. So that'd be 3 times negative 2 plus 5. So work that out. See, 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Negative 6 plus 5 is negative 1. So that comes out to be negative 1. So I come down here. I take what I got, negative 1. I'm going to plug it into f. So what is f of negative 1? Let's come up here and work that out. 3 times negative 1 plus 3. Okay. Work it. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. So my final answer, right, when I plug negative 2 into g, I got negative 1. When I plug negative 1 into f, I got 0. That's my final solution. So think of it as being this. You take your number, you plug it into the inside function, get your answer. Whatever answer you get, you plug into the outside function. That gives you the final answer. Let's look at what happens now. So let's look at an example when we don't have a number to plug in. So if you look at this one right here, it says find g of f of, and right here, instead of having a number to plug in, I have an x. When that happens, just like when we did the operations on the last lesson, instead of getting a number for an answer, we're going to get a rule, like an equation back out, something with an x in it. So let's give that a try. The first step is still the same. I just rewrite it. So when you rewrite it, the first, the g, goes on the outside. The second, the f, goes on the inside. Now the problem is I don't have a number to plug in into f. Right? It's just x. So what I do is I take the inside f of x, I come up here. What is f of x equal to? Well, it's equal to 4x plus 4. So come down here, I'm going to go g of, and I'm going to replace that f of x with what it's equal to. So now I have g of 4x plus 4. 2 lessons ago, we evaluated functions, and when we evaluated it, sometimes we plugged in things other than numbers. That's all we're doing here, so really we've already done this. I have to take the 4x plus 4, come up to g, and in place of the x right there, I'm going to put in that 4x plus 4. So I'll come up to g, I have 2 times, but in place of the x, I'm putting what's in the parentheses, 4x plus 4, and then I got the plus 3. So if you compare this and this together, they're exactly the same except for the x is replaced with the 4x plus 4. Okay, work that out. We just need to simplify that, and that's my answer. So distribute the 2 through. So it'd be, 2 times 4x is 8x. 2 times 4 is 8 plus 3. Those are like terms. You can combine those together. So my final answer, g of f of x comes out to be 8x plus 11. So instead of getting a number as an answer, like on that last problem, what do we get? Like a 0? Instead of getting a number for an answer, I get an equation for an answer. Okay, I get that 8x plus 11. Let me show you one more. In fact, let's do this. Why don't you, again, pause the video. Give this one a try first, and then I'll work down through this, and you can compare your answer and see how you did. Okay, so I'm always going to start every time on these function operations by rewriting it. So I rewrite the composition this way, f of g of a. Okay, start with the inside. If I had a number, I would plug it into g, but I don't. So instead, I'm going to take what g of a is, come up to g of a. G of a equals 2a minus 3, and I'm going to plug that in for g of a. Okay, when I get to here, I want to find out what is f of 2a minus 3. So now I come up to f up here, and in place of that a right there, I'm going to plug in what I have in the parentheses. So I have 2 times, but in place of the a, I'm going to put in the 2a minus 3 plus 3. And that should be my answer. I just need to simplify it. So let's see if we can simplify it. Distribute that 2 through 2 times 2a, 2 times a minus 3. Combine those together. Hey, that's my answer. So f of g of a comes out to be 4a minus 3. That's my solution. Okay, so if you really think about what we're doing here, what I'm doing is taking the inside g of a, this function right here, and I'm plugging it in for the variable for the a and the f of a. Plug it in there, and that combine them together. That gives you your solution. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. That's a composition of functions is what we call it. Work through the assignment. As you go, make sure you let me know if you have questions. I'd love to help you with those.